Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Logistics Manager webinar sponsored by Merv Fleet Services. I'm Ruben Henry Fellows, Deputy Editor at Carbo Media, the publisher of Logistics Manager, and your host for today's session, titled Creating an EV Fleet Depot Charging Strategy That Works. Creating an EV fleet depot charging strategy that works delves into why adding chargers alone is not enough to support your fleet. Electrification is transforming logistics and transportation, lighting up opportunities for fleet operators seeking to reduce costs and fast-track decarbonisation. However, outlays must be strategic to ensure that investments are maximized, and with each business unique in scale and complexity, now more than ever, developing a well-planned charging strategy ensures fleets stay powered, cost-effective, and ready for the road ahead. That's where Merv Fleet Services comes in. As a leading provider of smart electric vehicle charging solutions, Merv Fleet Services supports businesses in navigating the complexities of fleet electrification, from designing tailored depot charging strategies to implementing scalable infrastructure that grows with operational demand. With deep expertise in sustainable energy and a proven track record across Europe, Merv Fleet Services helps fleet operators make the transition to electric mobility seamlessly, ensuring reliability, efficiency, and long-term value. To explore this topic in more detail, I am joined today by Merv Fleet Services National Fleet Manager Louise Colbert and its National Sales Manager Scott Duncan, both of whom will outline a consultancy-led approach that balances power availability, operational requirements, and long-term costs, backed by real-world case studies on vans and HGVs. Over the course of this webinar, we'll explore how strategic electrification and smart charging can transform logistics operations. You'll learn how the right fleet management approach can drive greater efficiency, sustainability, and performance across the supply chain. At this point, I'd just like to encourage viewers to ask questions throughout the presentation via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please remember to submit your name, job title, and company when doing so, so we can find you accordingly. I'll pose as many of these questions as possible to Louise and Scott in the time available following the presentation. Also, a recording of this webinar will be made soon available to view on demand via logisticsmanager.com, so look out for that. And with that, I'll now hand over to the Merv team, Louise and Scott, to start the presentation section of this webinar. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ruben.
Thanks, Ruben. Welcome, everybody. So essentially, our webinar today is going to talk you through our advice and guidance on creating that EV fleet depot charging strategy that works for you guys. Okay, so who are we? We are Merv Fleet Services. We are a European EV charging company backed by Statkraft, which is Europe's largest renewable energy generator. Within the UK, we have public and then private, which is Merv Fleet Services. That covers fleet and workplace, advising customers on their needs for electrification. It's really important about the Statkraft piece, just to point that out, because that is our heritage. And Merv is the mobility arm of Statkraft. As you can see on the screen, we've got 700 plus fleet customers, over 3,000 charge points installed, and almost 10 years in the UK. It's probably worth pointing out that we were formerly Elmtronics, and I think a lot of you on the call today will probably have heard of Elmtronics. They were also a national charge point operator, and we were Merv as of 2022. This industry is completely overwhelmed with choice at the moment. You know, it's what vehicle, what hardware, where will I put the chargers? But ultimately, Merv is deeply committed to the long-term and sustainable development of the UK's EV charging infrastructure for depot and fleets, which we are going to talk about more in detail today. So, as Ruben introduced us, I'm Louise. I have been at Merv for 18 months and was completely new to this industry. Prior to that, I worked for fleet companies. I was a national sales manager for Dawson Group Vans, and prior to that, Northgate. So I have been in the position that some of you are in today. I've had those conversations about the transition from ICE vehicles to EV, the range, the payload, you know, all of those issues that I know a lot of you are facing in these logistics companies that you're in. So it was a natural step for me to move into EV charging. I'm still learning. It's huge. there's lots and lots to learn, and yeah, I love this industry. So in my personal life, I've got 2 children, 2 young boys who keep me very busy. So if I'm not talking about charge points and power supplies, you'll probably find me on a football pitch watching one of the 2 kids have a kickabout. And my colleague Scott.
Good morning. My name's Scott Duncan. As you can see there, I'm the National Sales and Business Support Manager at Mer. I've actually been with the business for approaching 5 years now, which is seems like a very long time in this industry. A lot has changed in that time. My role is very much supporting our customers with the account management commercial responsibility for their transition to fleet and workplace EV charging. My customers are typically within the public sector. With some of our largest and longest serving customers across the likes of local authorities, NHS Foundation trusts, ambulance services, police authorities, and fire and rescue. So hopefully I'll evidence some long-lasting sort of experience supporting some of our larger customers. Prior to Mer, I had a 20-year career at working with various kind of commercial and account management consultancy roles with the likes of the Engineering Employers Federation, the then Northeast Regional Development Agency, and the Department of International Trade. On a personal note, as you can probably tell from my dialect, I'm from Newcastle, I'm a Geordie, and I think that probably gives you rite of passage to be a lover of football as well, and of course Newcastle United. I'm also a father of 2 who keep me very, very busy as well. Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to cover today on today's agenda, why are organisations electrifying their fleet? Are you looking to tick that green box, get the green credentials? The nervousness around the ICE vehicles moving to EV. Where do you start? So what have you got to consider? Not looking for solutions at this point, just highlighting what needs to be considered: stakeholders, disruption to your business, protecting your reputation. There's many key challenges that Scott's going to cover. We're going to talk about the power, we're going to talk about the space, the budgets, and then the requirements for your organisation. It's not one size fits all. It is going to be what works for your business, which again we'll delve into, which will follow on how we're going to design that depot charging. Again, thinking about planning and implementing your vision. We will then delve into a couple of case studies. Today it'll be IKEA and DX. And then we will just open up for questions. Okay, so we're going to do a little poll now, just to see where you are in your journey. So I think that's probably on your screen now, just to tell us where you are in this journey, and have you begun electrifying yet?
It's actually really quite interesting. We did expect there'd be people at various points in the journey. It's good to see that a large proportion of you are somewhat on the journey. So hopefully some of what we'll cover today you may have already done. Hopefully there's some bits of advice or things to reflect upon that you can start doing kind of going forward. Obviously a small proportion of people or organisations haven't started the journey yet. So again, hopefully what we cover today will be valuable for you.
Okay, so Scott, obviously you've been here a lot longer, and based on your experience, why are organisations electrifying their fleet?
I think clearly there'll be a range of reasons for various different organisations. I think obviously there's a major point here around transport being the largest emitter of carbon in the UK at 29% there. That's even more than heavy industry and power generation. So that obviously provides a government focus for looking to reduce carbon emissions through transport. But looking at why organisations are looking to electrify themselves, I've kind of classified this into sort of 3 categories here. Obviously, the first of which is regulation. I think there's no hiding from the fact there is obviously regulation that is dictating a large portion of this. Obviously, through the ZEV mandate, phasing out of HGVs by 2040. The likes of the ULEZ low emission zones are increasingly being implemented. That does have an impact on organisations. So obviously these things have to be factored into the business. They do affect kind of the operational performance and financial performance of organisations. So they do obviously look to transition their fleet across to electric vehicle. You know, in terms of sustainability, yes, regulation may dictate somewhat the drive towards electrification. But obviously, organizations do have their own net zero and environmental policies that they're looking to implement and achieve. And that's very much a driver we see for organizations who are electrifying their fleet. I think sustainability, though, also goes into kind of commercial sustainability as well. And quite frankly, transition into EV does make good business sense. It certainly can do. There's certainly financial benefits that can be achieved, whether that's through reduced operational costs within the whole life cycle of the EV fleet, whether that's lower fuel maintenance costs, whether again that's compliance with low emission zones, and that can obviously deliver financial benefit to the business. Within that is enhanced brand reputation as well. Obviously, businesses that can demonstrate their commitment to environmental and sustainability goals, it does prove attractive to customers and helps you to attract and retain your customer base. And obviously that can lead on to potential business growth within your organization. The final thing I've mentioned there is obviously incentives and financial incentives that it does help support the move to electrifying your fleet. Of course, there is various kind of tax and incentives and allowances that you can benefit from. There is also, of course, government funding incentives as well that are available via the Office of Zero Emission Vehicles. Historically, that's very much been quite a limited grant in many respects with the workplace charging scheme, which can be used by businesses who are looking to electrify their fleet. Albeit, I would suggest it doesn't have a significant impact on the full outlay of a EV charging installation. But as of July, there's obviously been some new funding calls gone out. And I'm sure many of you are aware of the Depot for Charging Scheme grant that's now available, which is a £30 million pot of funding, which will finance up to 75% of your EV charging installation. The deadline for applications for that is actually November this year. So if you haven't yet applied, I would suggest it would be something that you should look at and then attempt to get access to. These projects do have to be installed by March, however, next year. So again, timescales are very limited, but may still be an opportunity for yourselves to take advantage of that funding. For those public sector organisations on the webinar as well, there is also an additional fund available to NHS Foundation Trusts and ambulance services, which is also an additional £8 million pot of funding, which is aimed at supporting 1,200 EV charge points across 62 NHS organisations. So yes, incentives, there is some available. If you are able to access them, I would certainly encourage you to do so.
Okay, so where are people likely to start with this, Scott? What is it that people need to look out for? What is the starting position?
Yeah, I think the first thing to recognise that, and I do appreciate, particularly looking at the poll, there's some people are very new to this or just starting this. It can seem like a very daunting exercise, particularly those who have large fleets, particularly those organisations who have multiple depots as well. So there's lots of things to consider, as you would expect, but I've set out some of my kind of key recommendations here. Sorry, if you just go back on that slide, please. Yeah. The first one I would start with is, like any role of any successful strategy, you need to set out a vision and well-defined goals and milestones for your EV charging strategy. An example of a vision may be something around your commitment to all or a proportion of your fleet to transition across to EV by a certain point in time. And typically amongst fleet operators, electrification goals and objectives look at things like achieving regulatory compliance, transitioning your current fleet to EV, what proportion of that fleet you transition across by a given time, operational efficiencies, so goals around how it can reduce costs and improve operational performance potentially. Obviously, objectives around reducing carbon emissions and environmental goals, and the point I make around enhancing your brand reputation as well. In terms of operational requirements, again, there's lots to consider at this point. I mean, before this call, I made a bit of a list of some of the things that I would recommend that you cover. And whilst this isn't an exhaustive list, there is certainly a significant number of things to consider. First of all, obviously, how many vehicles you need to transition across to EV. For some of you, that will be significant numbers. Also, consideration given to the types of vehicles that you have. Is it cars? Is it HGVs and the likes? Consideration also given to the distances that those vehicles do as well. Are those vehicles used in a single shift, or are they kind of a 24/7 multi-shift kind of operation? All of this will really kind of dictate, first of all, which of those vehicles you can pick off in the first instance that are currently viable for your transition to EV. It will also help inform a charge point operator like ourselves to come up with solutions to support the charging of your fleet. Other things to consider is how, where, and when your vehicles will need charged. This is obviously a major consideration when we look at things like the type of charging that we can provide. You're probably aware of the difference between AC charging and DC charging. AC charging, which is obviously charging vehicles over many hours, as opposed to DC charging, certainly the more powerful equipment, charging vehicles in minutes rather than hours. All of these considerations are really important because it will inform the solutions that we put forward, and obviously the costs associated with things such as DC equipment will obviously cost you more than slower AC charging. It will require more power from your site, which may in turn require you to upgrade the power to your facility, which again can be a costly exercise.
Okay, so yeah, I touched on this before. We're going to talk about these three key challenges now, and what they could represent to the customer.
Yeah. Just before I do that, though, I just to kind of cover a few more points really in terms of important factors to consider before looking at your EV strategy. Another point I would make is around the stakeholders that you incorporate into your development of your strategy and the rollout of your plan. There is certainly the risk that as a business that you can operate in silos. So I would certainly encourage that you get key stakeholders involved in the process. That will include such people as senior management, which who can obviously have a strategic view of the reason that you're transitioning to EV. Finance and procurement obviously have an important part to play in terms of the budgetary and purchasing of these services. Your fleet management should obviously be involved. Your facilities or estates department should take part, as well as the likes of your health and safety and environmental teams. One of the key points I would want to make is I think it's really important at an early stage that you involve external expertise as well in this process, because there's lots of expensive mistakes to be made. So finding a good partner will help you approach your strategy in a most effective and efficient way possible. Budgets will obviously also play a part. So you need to understand the budgets that are available. This can be a costly exercise. The cost of the vehicles themselves can be expensive. The potential need for DNO power upgrades can be an expensive exercise, as well as the need for to invest obviously in the installation of your EV charging infrastructure. I would say to overcome some of those issues, though, there are things you can do from a budgetary point of view. Certainly, like I've mentioned, take advantage of the funding that's available to you. As I've mentioned, utilize the expertise and the services provided by EV charging companies such as ourselves. And also a key part is taking a phased approach to your EV transition. You don't have to do this all at once. You can spread that investment out over time as and deliver sort of incremental wins. Allows you to learn and evolve from the changing needs of the business, and in turn could potentially lead to savings in your investments going forward, and also benefits around realizing the benefits around advancement in technology. The vehicles are continue to advance, the ranges they deliver continue to provide better range for you as organizations. Equally, the advancement in the technology of the EV charging infrastructure itself. So I couldn't encourage that more, is to really think about how you can have a phased approach to this. In terms of the key challenges, though, around power, I think this is probably the most common factor that you will be presented with. Quite frankly, the local UK local grid infrastructure hasn't catered for the volume of EV charging that was going to be needed across the grid. And equally, your depots we've never set up to be EV fleet charging hubs either. So the likelihood is there is going to be a power issue. There is a potential need for upgrades of power as well. A key part to this, I would say, is really at an early stage, again, utilizing the support of external organizations like ourselves, is really looking at what is possible in your on your depots regarding power. So the key things we would need to know, or you should be looking to obtain, is things like understanding what power is available on your site, what is the incoming supply rating of your site, and what is the maximum demand, what is the most power that's ever utilized at any one time within your facility. That information is obtainable from the likes of your energy provider, maybe in the meters within your facility as well. There is also the ability to do load testing to really understand how the profile of that power demand looks across the site. All of this is really critical information to understand what is possible within your site currently, and what an EV charging partner can bring in terms of technologies around load balancing, but also it'll help inform your decision making around the need for potentially power upgrades with your DNO. Again, this can be an expensive exercise, so utilizing the support available to advise and guide you will be really important at this stage.
Yeah.
Another key challenge is the facilities themselves, the space that you currently have. Quite frankly, they may not be big enough, or they may not cater for these EV charging hubs that fleet charging hubs that we talk about. The typical constraints that you may have in your facility, maybe from your landlords. You know, some of you may have landlords and you need to seek their approval, who for whatever reason may not be willing or able to allow you to have EV charging infrastructure on your facility. You know, key considerations that at that point is, if you can't have it, do you then have to potentially look at relocating your depot to be able to provide EV charging infrastructure? Is the facility big enough? Particularly for those of you who are going to need quite significant power upgrades, may have the requirement for substations to be built on your site, may have the requirement for larger DC chargers, like you can see on the slide there. These all have an impact in terms of taking up space on your facility, which you may not have, and may lead to the reduced ability to charge your fleet within your facility. We would always typically advise around your site that we would always look to locate the chargers as close as possible to the building or the power, but that simply might not be possible for a range of operational needs. It may be the flow of the traffic around the site prohibits you from installing the chargers in the optimum location on site. It may be that the vehicles can't need to perform another operational task whilst needing to be charged. That could be things such as, you know, the vehicles being loaded. You can't locate the chargers in that same area potentially. They may be needed to be located in areas where vehicles are being cleaned, or where maybe other onboard equipment may need charging. These are all things that might prohibit you from locating your chargers where they should be best placed. The final thing, and it's a really important point around space, is increasingly we're seeing a demand, if you like, from insurance companies, or insurance companies dictating where chargers should be located. Increasingly, we're seeing, you know, the need for chargers to be located at least 7 to 10 meters away from the building. These are all key considerations that we would need to understand prior to advising a solution for your depots. And the final sort of key challenge I mentioned there will obviously be the financial piece. For those of you with larger fleets, I've mentioned this can be an expensive exercise. There is obviously the investment in the vehicles. There's potentially the need for power upgrades, which can be a significant cost in itself. And then obviously all the costs associated with the installation of the electrical and civils works required to install your EV charging infrastructure. I think some of these budgetary sort of constraints can be mitigated. Certainly when you consider the lifetime cost of a vehicle, the lower running and maintenance costs may, and potential tax incentives and allowance may mitigate this issue somewhat. I've already mentioned the access to grants that is or may be available to you. We certainly look to see how we can benefit from that to reduce the impact on you financially. But I would also come back to, again, the point I've stated several times now is utilising the expertise of EV charging partners who will be able to advise and guide you throughout. There is some expensive mistakes can be made if you haven't looked at things through the eye of a kind of future-proofing mindset. If you don't do that, as I say, they could lead to some quite significant costs that can get out of control. So yeah, I would just like to kind of point out that need to, you know, seek the sort of external support available to you, and again, look at that phased approach to your EV charging implementation. Thank you.
Okay, so how do we now do this? How do we craft what that looks like? How do we make this successful? Go to the next slide. Yeah, we know that you need to keep your fleets operational at all times. We also know that you may represent brand, you know, different brands, and, you know, that's imperative. So our job is obviously keeping that operation up, keeping you relevant and protecting your reputation. I said it earlier on, it's not going to be one size fits all. So Scott has obviously discussed a few things on you know, talking about the power and talking about space and different things. So we've put actually a couple of scenarios here just to give you a bit of a feel for it. So we talked about AC charging, we've talked about DC charging. So two completely different scenarios here. So we put the last mile delivery. So basically, you know, there'll probably be a lot of you on this call that run an operation very similar to this. So let's say that a company wants to electrify a small portion of its vans because they're going to expand the fleet. So they're keeping some, but they're going to electrify, just say, I don't know, say 5% of their fleet. And let's say that the vehicle range is 120 miles on a full charge. Now I'm saying that, so that's already been loaded up. So that's 120 miles with the full payload in, because let's face it, you know, what they say is payload, what they say is range, and then you fill your vehicle up and you know you're not getting that range. But these are on a shift pattern. So these vehicles are going back to that depot as soon as they've done their 100-mile round trip, and they are going back to that depot. So what would we do? What would we suggest for that? Basically, we would suggest the AC charging. We would say those vehicles are all going back over and going to be there overnight. So that is providing they've got the power, providing they've got the space. What we would suggest and what we would look at is an AC charging solution. So all those vehicles can be charged overnight and then ready to go the next day, and they can run on there for the full amount of their range, and then they're going back. So it sounds easy, doesn't it? Not always the case, but that is just a scenario that we put for, you know, vehicles that are going to be going back. Okay. And then essential fleet. Now, essential fleet is like an ambulance service, for instance. So a company that have got vehicles that run multiple shifts and they sort every asset, as we said there. So these vehicles are in constant use. So again, we would probably, and it would be tailored to the business, or you know, it may be that we suggest that you have some AC still, but ultimately this would be DC charging. This would be the rapid charging. This would be the stuff that you know, you're in and out, so you're fully turning around. You know, we need to be realistic to understand that there will be an element of probably en route charging available here, but the key challenges on this one would be definitely power, and also it's going to be budget, because as Scott previously mentioned, you know, that the DC stuff does come, it is more expensive than AC. But you see, these are all different scenarios, and like I said, it's never going to be one size fits all. In 18 months that I've been at Mer, I don't think I've seen one customer or dealt with one customer that has got the exact same operational requirements as somebody else. So whether your transition to EV is now or it's in your future, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4 years away, we need to start creating that picture now. It's what does your journey look like? How can we help you? What is your operational requirement? What is it you need? And what is it you need to consider, really? So some food for thought there. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, and with that, you know, how do we design that? What does that look like? How can the charge point operator that you're using, how can they get involved and help you more in that design? So Scott, do you want to discuss through this a little bit more?
I can indeed, yeah. Again, there's a range of services that are available to organisations who are really at that initial stage of looking at their EV strategy and their transition plan. Make decisions and develop your strategy based on data and consideration for multiple things. One of the services that are available is actually isn't on that slide is the services provided around fleet optimization. So how we can look at your telematics data and your route data to advise on the optimal transition plan for your fleet transition. It would look at those vehicles that we can look to transition in the early stages, setting out those vehicles that may be out of scope at the moment, but develop a plan for those going forward. So yeah, the telematics and the fleet optimization piece is really quite a key consideration to help you roll out your EV strategy. There is a range of other services you can see there. You can obviously take advantage of engineering expertise available within many EV charging partners, and the ability to have an engineer going out to site to look at your site, consider the constraints that you have at your depot, and from that provide a range of recommendations around the types of charging that is possible or may be possible, the location of the infrastructure within your depot, consideration to the electrical and civils requirements, whether there is a need for you to upgrade your power or whether we can incorporate technologies around load balancing. And of course, it helps us to give you an impression of the cost implications associated with that solution. We provide a range of design consultancy services and electrical design drawings and civils design drawings, which we provide for a lot of our customers, particularly those who may be going out to tender and they want to take advantage of the expertise from an EV specialist as opposed to a general electrical contractor, to benefit from designs that will work and can be rolled out potentially with other contractors as well. I mentioned load testing briefly earlier. I think it's a really important point because we need to understand the capacity available within your facility, and it's not just as simple as saying, well, what's the most power used at any one particular time. Some of our storyboarding and our reporting for around load testing will look at what a typical day looks like in terms of your power demands. Is there particular periods of the day where you've got high demand, and EV charging may not be possible during those periods. And equally, is there periods of the day where there's less demand within the facility and can provide the optimum time, if you like, for EV charging to take place. From that, again, he could come to the conclusion that quite frankly, the capacity isn't there and it won't be possible in the current condition to install EV charging infrastructure. We also do DNO applications on our customers' behalves, as will other EV charging partners, I'm sure. I think this is a really important point because, you know, greatest will in the world, you guys know your business, won't necessarily know how to make a DNO application, which is quite a technical exercise. So just leave that to the experts who will do that on your behalf. We do also do some work around our 3D modeling, which is really impressive stuff. Really gives you an accurate visualization of what your charging infrastructure will look like, how it would look on the depot. This is quite often used by customers, again, who are maybe going to tender and they want to set that out in their tender specification. Equally, it's used by our customers who are looking to market and promote developments on their particular site. So it is something that our customers take advantage of, and it may be a benefit to you as you inform your EV strategy. The final thing there is obviously the integration piece with solar, PV solar and battery storage. Again, it's something increasingly being looked at by our customers, and something that we can support in partnership with some of the organisations that we collaborate with.
Okay, so SLAs and aftercare. What is this? What does it mean to you? How does it work? Again, this will be different for each customer. We've talked about some mission critical customers and people that we, you know, the ambulance service, police, and you know, any NHS. But there'll also be people that you know, that have the customers that have their vehicle, the AC charging, they're kept in overnight, or they might do a small run and they're only doing very small mileage. So the operation and maintenance package, it needs to be the right product and the right solution for you. And you need to consider the level of support that you need, because obviously this will secure the uptime of your chargers. So, you know, the unlimited remote support and engineer attendance, 90% of our fixes are done remotely. And I imagine that other CPOs are very similar. You know, you'd want to be looking for something that's got 24/7 support for drivers. Of course, you want that. You don't want, you know, it's not like you're in your ICE vehicle. It's different. It's, you know, the charger isn't working, therefore the vehicle can't go back out. You know, again, you're representing a brand. You're going to miss your next deadline. You know, we understand how the importance of this. The annual servicing, obviously, that maintains the warranty. This is something that you definitely must consider. You know, this is all of these things you have to bear in mind and make sure that, you know, with the level of service, the level of service that you want, that you make sure that you've got in that package, and that the resolution time matches that of your need. This is obviously what I said. I mean, at MER we have a 99% retention on our SLAs. Is there anything you want to add there, Scott? If anything you think I've missed about just the support and the levels of service?
Yeah, I think the appropriate point to make is, you know, there is different levels of service that is appropriate to your business. So those critical fleets or mission critical fleets can't afford for their chargers not to be working because they can't perform the operation of your business. So obviously the resolution times that we can deliver, we can provide appropriate to your business. That could be 4-hour response times, for example. Similarly, for those organisations who maybe don't have that critical nature behind their fleet, can potentially afford to have longer resolution times. So we can flex our SLA and aftercare support depending on the needs of your business.
Yeah. So should we just discuss a couple of examples now? And, you know, people that obviously customers that we've got, we just want to go through a couple of case studies now.
So yeah, obviously the first one, this is an example of one of our leading customer, if you like, with in terms of size and scale at Mer. And I'm sure you've heard of them. I'm sure you've heard of IKEA's world's largest furniture retailer, of 400 stores across 50 countries. Mer have actually been supporting IKEA since 2022, supporting them to achieve their aim to reach 100% zero emission deliveries by 2025. The support we provided with IKEA back in 2022 started with some of those design consultancy services that I referred to earlier, looking at and understanding the power requirements for each of the stores, identifying where grid connections may be needed, also completing an analysis of how vehicles operate at each of IKEA's depots. It's enabled us to accurately calculate how many rapid chargers and AC fast chargers that we required at each of their locations. From that body of work, that obviously led to us installing infrastructure across many of their sites, and just looking at some of the results there. You'll appreciate this is an ongoing contract, so some of these figures are actually slightly out of date, I would suggest, but we're looking at a contract in the region of £5 million to date, in the region of 350 sockets, both AC and DC, across 22 locations, I believe, at this current moment. And we're supporting 320 home deliveries across electric vans. I think that just gives you a flavour of the size and nature and scale of the support we can provide our customers, and the customers that we have proven to support to date.
Okay, go to the next slide. Yeah. Okay, so again, IKEA, obviously, most of you, I'm sure, would have heard of it, as is the case with DX, a UK-based logistics company. Now, this was before my time, but I know that DX were a very early adapter of EV infrastructure, and I don't think that they had much of a plan or an idea of how that looked and how that would work. So we gave them advice and designed a proposal for them. They didn't understand how to integrate this into a depot, into their working environment, because DX are a 24/7 operation. They work nights. They're constantly. It's how do we not disrupt this business? How can we get in to help them and to design something where we're not going to disrupt this operation? So we electrified their whole distribution operation. It's all AC, so again, it's quite similar to, I suppose, the scenario that I gave you earlier on. And as you can see there with the results, 750k in phase one. That is again all AC. That's over 5 hubs with 60 sockets. Now, this wouldn't have been easy. Like you see there, it's got DNO upgrades. This was a huge task for a company that has got a massive requirement, a 24/7 operation, and Mer partnered with them, and they were there at the beginning and were there at the end. And I think the one bit of feedback that DX would say is that our advice and our planning was invaluable to this. So it's something that we're really proud of, and yeah, our relationship continues to grow with DX. So that's the next slide, please. Okay, so onto our proposition, Scott.
Yeah, just as we come to the end of our presentation, we just want to kind of round off about what Mer's value proposition is and why customers like to work with us. So there's a bit of a roadmap you can see there on the screen. The first point to note is obviously our ownership. We're owned by Statkraft, as I say, Europe's largest renewable energy generator. Actually state-owned business, owned by the Norwegian government. So what does that mean to customers? It's about the heritage that's steeped in clean energy. It's about obviously the financial backing that we receive from Statkraft. Enabled to bring the learnings really from Norway, from Scandinavia, who are recognised as a global leader in electric vehicle adoption. So we can bring that expertise, if you like, over to the UK. The second point there you see around design consultancy services, I'll not labour the point, I've said it a few times, there's a range of services that are available that really help inform your strategy, both in the near term and in the long term. Hardware. I think an important point around our offering is we are agnostic in our the EV charging solutions that we promote. That means we don't just provide you with the hardware that we manufacture. It's about us doing the due diligence on your behalf to identify the best chargers for a given scenario for a given customer, and make sure we procure those at very competitive rates and install them within your locations. It goes without saying that we have the installation capability through ourselves and through our partners, who are specialist EV charging install partners. Technology, obviously, you know, the charge point management system, Connect in our case, provides that really critical data that you need as fleet operators to manage your infrastructure, manage your charging infrastructure, and inform and advise on and provide data to inform and advise your decisions going forward. And the final piece of the jigsaw, if you like, is the aftercare services that we provide. As Louise mentioned, we provide a bespoke solution depending on your need, which is typically offered around unlimited support for both the organization and for the drivers. It's around maintaining and providing annual services of your chargers, but importantly, providing you with response times that's appropriate to your operational needs. So really, just to kind of summarize that point is, you know, why organizations work with us. I think because of our expertise and our heritage and our history in this sector, we're trusted by our customers. We design the right solutions. We provide market leading EV charging equipment, and able to procure that at very good commercial rates for our customers. We're always evolving and developing our charge point management system to continue to meet the needs of our fleet customers. And that final kind of piece of the jigsaw is around aftercare. If all else fails throughout that roadmap, if those chargers go offline, you need to have the confidence that they will be back online and working for you to fulfill your operational need as quickly as possible. So we like to think that full service offering really provides the comfort and the certainty that we provide a high level of service to our customers.
Okay, and that's it. So I just want to say thank you for those of you that joined that poll earlier on and hadn't yet started on the journey. I hope this has been insightful and helpful to you. For those who are on the journey, I hope that you managed to take something from this. If you've got any questions, obviously now would be the time to ask. And if you're interested in any information or more information on what we discussed today, please scan that QR code, and you can download our e-guide, which has everything you need to know about installing EV charging. Yeah, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Louise, Scott, thank you both for that excellent presentation. I think for many fleet operators, expansion can be a daunting task. So to sum it up so succinctly demonstrates the experience and expertise you both have, and that Merv Fleet Services has at its disposal. But that leads us nicely into our interactive Q&A section of the webinar. For our viewers, now is the time to submit your questions if you haven't done so already. But I thought I'd start off the questions. This goes to either one of you, but what do you think is the biggest mistake that someone could make when planning an EV strategy?
Let me take that one.
Yeah, if you want to.
I think I've mentioned this within the presentation. I think a key part is taking the time to develop the strategy and gather the data, gather the intelligence, do the due diligence before you start to roll out your EV charging strategy. I think probably far too often I see scenarios where a customer will come to us and say, our fleet managers purchased or acquired some electric vehicles. We now need EV charging infrastructure. So you kind of go into that reactive mode, if you like. Taking that time to develop the strategy, looking at your depots, looking at what's possible now within your fleet and within your depots, looking at the near term and with a view to future proofing in the long term is really an important point. So take the time to do the upfront work, do the due diligence before you step into purchasing vehicles and looking for EV infrastructure.
Okay. What do you think are some of the most important metrics when tracking the success of the transition?
Well, there will be a range of metrics that you can look at. There's obviously the metrics around the investment you've made in the fleet, looking at the investment you've made around the EV charging infrastructure as well.
The types of EV that you're looking at, whether that's cars, whether that's vans, or whether that's HGV, that's definitely an important point.
Other metrics around the operational efficiency, I think that's obviously a critical point. It's looking at the lifetime cost savings that might be delivered through the transition from ICE to EV. That's certainly a key metric that our customers will measure. Also, the impact it has on operational performance. There may be negative impacts associated with that transition to EV. The ranges on the vehicles may prohibit a journey being completed without the need to charge and have that downtime. So, operational efficiency and operational performance is certainly metrics that our customers would look at. And of course, the other things to look at would be around sustainability and environmental factors.
Okay. So to the operators whose drivers are more skeptical about EVs, maybe they've driven ICE vehicles or more traditional vehicles for such a long time, how would you suggest that they get them on board?
It's quite a common kind of issue. I would suggest there's a lot we can advise our customers on, and we actually do also provide driver training to overcome some of these issues. Some of the things that customers can do, organizations can do, is really looking at let's face it, there's a lot of myths out there in terms of the downside of EV. There's lots of work that can be done around myth busting to overcome some of those rumors, if you like, that go around the industry. There's lots of training, support, guidance can be provided around overcoming quite common concerns around range anxiety. The concern that the driver won't be able to perform their daily tasks without the need to charge, and that does obviously cause anxiety for them. There's driver training, so there's behavioral things that customers can look at to look at getting optimal performance out of the EV in terms of range, and looking at charging best practice. So when to charge, where to charge is really important points to consider. And I think the other thing to note is that ongoing support as well. So, for example, a charge point operator is providing 24/7 support to the driver. It's that comfort of knowing that if they have an issue at the charge point, they have that support there, and then 24/7 to overcome those issues. So there's kind of various things that companies can do either themselves or using external support to do that. I would say, once you get that driver into that vehicle, they're fun. And once they overcome those anxieties, I think they would be converted. But certainly there's steps to be taken prior to that around support and training to the drivers.
And lastly, from my questions, in your experience, what funding models are available for organizations looking to expand their fleets?
I think Scott's touched on a lot of this today, haven't you, with the funding? There's a lot more funding at the moment, but do you want to reiterate just some the funding options that?
Absolutely. I mean, within the fleet space, there could potentially be, I wouldn't say it's common, but there could potentially be the ability for a funded, a partially funded model from charge point operators. Now, obviously, for that to work, it has to be commercially viable. So that would be where the CPO would invest in your infrastructure, and a commercial agreement would be formed, which would obviously return that and deliver revenue to the CPO over the longer term. As I say, that's not a common model, but for some organizations that may be possible. The typical model is capex. It's funded by the organization. But obviously, as I've mentioned, there is grants available that can help subsidise that investment. There is also potentially the opportunity for leasing and finance agreements through leasing partners who may also be able to support that investment.
We have a question from Leon Wright, and it is, how can the very long lead times experienced for DNO works be mitigated?
Well,
I think a key part of that is around engagement with the DNOs as early as possible.
Yeah.
So as I've mentioned in the presentation, we more often than not do that DNO application piece on our customers' behalf, so we can hopefully help to reduce those lead times. There is also potentially the opportunity to work with IDNOs, so the independent DNOs, and to potentially deliver, reduced time frames, but also potentially look at power upgrades, which is much more cost effective than potentially going direct with the DNO.
Yeah.
So that's certainly the suggestions I would make.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you guys. And that brings us to the end of the webinar. So I'd like to once again thank you both for this brilliant presentation and for joining us this morning. And I'd also like to thank Mayor Fleet Services for sponsoring today's webinar, which will be available to view on demand soon by logisticsmanager.com, just in case you'd like to refer to the presentation or share it with a colleague. So yeah, that's it. We reached the end of today's webinar. Thank you all for attending, and I hope to see you all again for the next Logistics Manager webinar. Goodbye. Thank you, guys.